Yeah.
Hello, thank you so much for joining.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Donghyun.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Gosh, Dongyun's hair has grown. It's longer.
Beautiful.
Right. I think we have
Right.
everyone
Oh,
here, right?
everybody's here. Yay.
Yeah, Lodi is here
Yeah.
as well. Good
Yeah.
morning. Hi,
Good morning.
Fabrizio.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
Good night.
Good morning and good night.
Hi. Oh my God.
Oh, God.
Thank you, everybody. I know it's really difficult to gather everybody again, and I really appreciate. I want to just quickly introduce what this session is about and what we want to really have this time valuable. Today, basically, we scheduled 4 different discussion sessions per each unit, and we are going to just go through unit 1, 2, 3, 4 like this again. We want to kind of use this chance to for everybody to re-look at each other's work because we were all very tired or not being able to listen in, or sometimes brain dead, couldn't really discuss. We want use really this time to kind of really learn from each other also, and because we are very proud that we have 4 really different units, and we want to really have this chance to get everybody's perspective and feedback. So I want to encourage everybody have the camera on all the time if that's possible. Of course, it's not obligation, but we want to really run this as a discussion session instead of a lecture. So if you have any question, you can just let's take it more casually and talk to each other. Then I'm reading through my bullet points. Yeah, and we want to encourage all our instructors to listen in for other units presentations for this, so we can also get your unique perspective to something very different. Also, this session maybe will be more about pedagogical or like from higher perspective. We are discussing about your each tutor's unit agenda and in a bigger perspective. For students, this is a really good opportunity to kind of reflect on their own work within a bigger research umbrella within your research. So that's something we are really curious about, hearing from your voice about the work we did in the summer, and also having your perspective and being able to see a bigger picture, how it can be applied, or where is these kind of small projects are coming from. Yeah, and students are encouraged to also speak up if you have any questions, and tutors can also encourage to kind of maybe bring some students' attention and maybe let them speak up as well. But yeah, June, Taesong, Jaewon, Hanjun, do you want to add anything?
No, I think we can just, well, I know for me, it's fine.
No, it's fine.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Fine,
as
thank
well.
you.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start. We'll try to have around 1 hour per unit. Thank you. Shall we start from unit 1? It's okay.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So hello everyone again. Thank you for joining the Supercrit. We're Unit 1 tutors Catherine An and Fabrizio Furiosi. We're 2 architects, and we have a collaborative practice called Distributed Architecture based in New York. Fabrizio is currently in Switzerland and it's 3 a.m. in the morning there. So I'll be doing the presenting today, but the following is a joint recap and synthesis of the workshop we had in July.
Thank you, Catherine.
So to us, critique is less about evaluation or judgment and more about mapping out cultural contexts and constellation of works through which each project can gain meaning and agency. So we thought we'd begin with a brief background of where we're coming from in hopes that it can create a context and lineage for the works produced in K-Beats. I'm a formalist by training at the Cooper Union under the influences of John Haydock, Diane Lewis, and Peter Eisenman. And Fabrizio was educated in Italy, where form is at the foundation of all discussions. But through our graduate education and also our practice, our eyes have gradually opened to just how much the built environment is actually shaped and impacted by fields outside of architecture. And as we all know, since the end of 2019, COVID-19 has been spreading and respreading across the globe, which laid strikingly bare social inequities and further strained the weaknesses in our social and infrastructural systems, not to mention the catastrophic levels of mortality and prolonged social isolation, which upended any previous held notions of normalcy. And at the same time, the Black Lives Matter movement was in full force across the US, in particular after the murder of George Floyd, and also in other parts of the world. And the notion of decolonizing the architectural curriculum was beginning to receive strong support in academia. So with racial, class, and environmental reckonings happening simultaneously, the disciplinary boundaries seem to be rupturing and tensions created between architectural autonomy and social responsibility. During this time, Fabrizio was teaching a seminar and studio course at Parsons that investigated diverse fields like politics, ecology, and economy, and its impact onto and from architecture. This is a student work that focused on how the pandemic changed the spaces in the city. And although this was developed by a single person, it was the result of a collaborative effort in which all the members of the class contributed through collective explorations of the city and discussions. And during 2020, I was researching about radical and feminist pedagogies and practices from the 60s and 70s, which was also a turbulent era in terms of racial and environmental justice. And I was also exploring new ways to engage with communities through investigative walks and interviews during a research fellowship at the Institute for Public Architecture. And both of these projects were collaborative research, group research. So in light of these recent events and our research into broader social contexts and their impact on the built environment, we were thinking a lot about what is required of architects in this moment and in the future, and how we can reintegrate ourselves and our work into the world. We want to give agency to form to achieve social and cultural aims and to contribute to the larger social and environmental contexts, and to find meaning in form through context, which led to our collaborative project Uni Wi-Fi about providing community-owned, culturally grounded, and sculptural Wi-Fi structures to communities in need, and its long participatory development process. So K-Beats is an extension of this thinking process. So our methodology here is not a formal one, but a performative and discursive one. We're looking at the why and the how rather than the what. We're constantly looking for new territories to explore and new paths to stake out. And our most important aim in the K-Beats unit was to formulate questions that each participant could take with them beyond the 10-day workshop. So rather than giving a formal exercise, which admittedly might have been a simpler prompt, we wanted to find ways to see existing forms in new ways, to find moments in the built environment that embody or capture social phenomena. It was an exercise in seeing, not through someone else's eyes, but through one's own eyes, and to give first-person experiences and observations priority over secondary sources or references. To get there, we use two tools, walking and video documenting. Walking forces your body to slow down and to look at things anew and to find something, the beginnings of a question or a point of interest or a topic of one's own. And also walking together as a group allows us to see things together. Walking by definition grounds participants in Seoul and in 2020 as a new distinct environment if compared to the previous years, as well as see it as a city in motion, which we thought could take you away from abstract and canonical ways of thinking about Seoul. Video making is both a tool for observation and critical analysis. The camera forces you to look at your surroundings more intently and intentionally and discover things you might otherwise have never paid attention to. We actually realized through the workshop that filming was really a useful tool to slow down our eyes and bodies enough to make critical observations with our own eyes, notice things that we'd ordinarily miss, more than it was a tool to document fastness or slowness per se. And this was effectively illustrated by the Hackers team video, which, if you remember, captured the differences in what you see while walking versus riding the bus, and how it creates an entirely different relationship between you and the city. While you're walking, shown on the right, one is an active part of the city, while in a bus, shown on the left, one is merely an observer. The same is true for the arborists, who through multiple iterative observations found the powerful capacity of urban trees to create slowness despite the deformations required of them. And for the mediators, who through repeated watching and re-editing footage and revisiting the site, saw the ability for trash to index urban metabolism and the speed of production. We think documenting even a small architectural or urban gesture can create a larger question and meaning that sometimes you only understand afterwards. And for today, we're only showing distilled findings, but all three groups made multiple iterative versions of the videos, and their thinking changed and evolved with each version. We also started the workshop with reading and group discussions, which was meant to jumpstart a critical thinking process so that you approach the walking and looking already with a critical mind. We encourage the participants to question what they see and to find something that excites them or something that they'd want to change. We also discuss internally quite a lot to help shape the initial interest into a larger disciplinary question and address other fields. Then there's the how, which is the design proposal. So this workshop was meant to be a kind of mini thesis exercise to find a point of view and develop a stance through an architectural proposal. 10 days was indeed quite short, but we do think that it was possible within that time frame to find the beginnings of something that we think the participants can take with them beyond the workshop. And now we'll get into more of our actual unit topic. So we took the prompt of K something and the keyword social algorithm quite literally and seriously. And we've always thought of social algorithm as one synthetic phrase, not two separate words. So in our case, we think of social as having to do with cultural, political, or economic phenomena. And for algorithm, the dictionary definition is something like a procedure or set of rules or operations for solving a mathematical problem. But for the purposes of this exercise, we interpreted algorithm as an underlying system, a pattern, or a parameter that influences an outcome. And landscape designer Sarah Zudi puts succinctly that design is ultimately fortifying rituals, communities, and social interactions into the future. And in a similar vein, we thought that social interactions, rituals, and cultural practices would ultimately manifest into spatial form. And for those of us who don't reside in Seoul, the vibrant energy and the fastness of Seoul is particularly palpable and fascinating. So for K-Beats, we wanted to look at speed, or the cultural expectations around time and speed, as a temporal algorithm which impacts the built environment. And Seoul is not only dizzyingly fast, it's also at moments very quiet and slow. And for us, this dual condition made Seoul a rich territory to investigate the relationship between culturally specific conceptions of time and speed, what we call the city's chronotype for short, and its built environments. As we explained in our unit proposal, cultural ideas and expectations around time repeat themselves countlessly each day and becomes immensely impactful in how the city manifests over time. And the kind of 24-hour nonstop temporality of Seoul mirrors onto its built environments, with building interiors and signage changing as soon as they're constructed, and towers forming both upward and downward simultaneously. And yet historical palaces and city walls provide momentary slowness, transporting Seoulites into a slower way of life from centuries ago. And the presence of natural environments like Hangang and the Four Mountains around the old city offer scenic paths for meditative walks and a variety of geographic conditions for built and natural environments to interact. So for the workshop, working in groups, we asked the participants to walk around Utsuro, which is a beloved and historically industrial neighborhood with a small scale unruly fabric, which now faces imminent redevelopment and erasure. We thought its locations within the historic city walls and its adjacency to sparse and historic sites, as well as built up high rises, would allow a variety of built conditions and activities to be observed. And through multiple days of walking, documenting, and editing footage, participants of K-Beats found 4 insightful lenses through which to examine speed in the built environment: fast and slow urban development, fast and slow human movement, fast and slow urban metabolism, and fast and slow observation techniques. For arborists Seohun Lim and Soo-Chang Lee, through iterative recordings about materials and human movement, they found the powerful capacity of urban trees to create slowness, while simultaneously discovering the deformations required of these trees in the process of their instrumentalization and urbanization. So to this, the arborists responded by subverting the building first, tree second hierarchy through deforming buildings around the trees and allowing trees to invade the city over their 40-year growth period. And then the hackers, Jisoo Kim, Dongwook Park, and Yoongu Han, learned that walking generated an entirely different relationship with the city compared to other forms of transportation, such as riding a bus or a train. While walking, one becomes an active participant, while in a bus or train, one remains merely an observer. So using this slowness and participation relationship, the hackers presented ways to slow down the Uchiro redevelopment process through a series of small interventions that engage citizens with their surroundings, like populating the street with guerrilla art and sculptures, offering workshops and tutorials in active fabrication facilities to increase exposure to and interest in existing craft and fabrication techniques. And also creating a walking museum inside decommissioned shops and roofs to capture these buildings in their historic state. The mediators, Kyungmin Che, Jae-jun Lee, and Dongju Lee, critique the research methodology of our unit prompt itself by elucidating the gap between video documented and unrecorded walking experiences through side-by-side comparison of automatic, which are these three recordings, and filtered recordings, which is the intentionally framed on the top left. The mediators capitalized on this gap by investigating the territories between seeing, looking, observing, mediating, filtering, and editing. Their questions led to varied responses. One response was a critical text and memory map illustrating the difference between walks mediated and unmediated by the camera, highlighting only events deemed significant by the brain's filter. Similar to cartographic techniques used in the 18th and 19th century maps of Seoul. Another response was a building as automatic camera that inverts transparent and opaque architectural elements to create wholly unexpected views from outside looking in and vice versa. And the third response was a new Uchiro with elevated walkways and monumental trash towers that showcase and index industrial metabolism in real time through the production and dismantling of trash. We think each group's walking and looking field research resulted in unexpected and fascinating questions and propositions, which we hope will open new territories for further research, explorations, and production. Thank you to the Social Algorithm Research Group for inviting us to the school, and to our fellow tutors for their thought-provoking studios, and to the K-Beats participants for their wonderful and insightful questions and projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
That was
Catherine.
awesome.
Yeah, it's a bit different, right?
You feel it different?
Different from what?
I remember, yeah, I mean, the final day of a workshop, yeah, I don't know.
Oh, you probably understood better when the tutors sort of explain.
Yeah, I think so.
I have a very quick question as opening. And first of all, thank you very much for sharing as a edited version. I really appreciate you devote the time to wrap up your project. And I just have a question is, I got a terms called chronotypes. So you got this term from beginning of workshop or after you got a or project and research everything you've done and then you produce or you thought term chronotype later on?
I think it's Fabrizio, you can jump in, but it's a term that we had in the beginning as a kind of shorthand to talk about cultural understandings of time and speed. And our hypothesis was that it's different depending on where you are, that there are different notions of time and speed. So it's kind of a shorthand for that. Fabrizio,
Answering the question. Jayun.
Yes, you didn't hear that?
does that answer your?
Oh yeah, that's the answer. Yeah, thank you. But I think in addition to that answer, I think actually you are kind of using, but it's kind of taking the methodology of Stoker's at the same time psychogeographical methodology. I think particularly for the Stoker's, they are normally using their methodology in European conditions, European urban structures, which is quite really different. In a way, what they are doing is quite different way to find city or some aesthetic in the urban conditions. So I was really wondering how you guys, those type of methodology or some methodology or architecture or thinking apply for the Seoul, which is quite different condition as metropolitan. So I think by doing that, you gotta maybe chronotype is really a very smart way of thinking to compare those different conditions or distinguish or emphasizing on characteristic of Seoul. So in a way, I think what could be the different methodology or research term or research way of doing compared to maybe European urban condition and metropolitan like Seoul.
So the question is, what's the difference between using this methodology in Europe and using it in Korea?
Yeah. So also, what would be the expectation of methodology using like Stoker's or psychogeographical way? Yeah.
I'm not sure there is a big difference between what using the same methodology in different contexts. I think that the methodology that we employed was aimed at getting some information. And as far as you can find information through that methodology, I think it's effective and valid. So in our case, I think we used critical walking in order to have a full immersion in the city that could allow us to see things that usually go unseen, which is quite similar to what Stalker also did. Maybe the things we were searching are different, but still the methodology, I don't think it's really related to the context. It's an ethnographic method that you can use pretty much everywhere. So not sure. I mean, for me as a foreigner, I have always this feeling when I go in a place that I don't know, that I have to attune my senses, capture things that I don't know. I cannot really understand exactly what is going on. So I have to be more open to understand the context. And I think that this methodology, in some ways, it's more effective than just like staying in a desk and researching things from secondary sources. So I don't know if this answers the question. Catherine, you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just add that in my understanding of Stalker's work, it is a bit more politically bent, and they're seeking kind of marginal communities. And I think in our case, we had thought about that too, but I think where the workshop ended up being is not so much about marginalization necessarily. I think it depended a little bit on the group. I would say maybe in the case of the K-Zone project, that was a little bit more about like trying to address this existing community in Utsudo and how to even wrap your head around the new development that will more or less erase everything that's there. But I think it kind of ended up varying depending on the groups, because we had this other topic of looking at speed and prototypes. But nonetheless, we thought it was, it led to interesting discoveries.
Thank you.
Mm.
Any other questions or comments?
I have one. I think the device that read the city as I think it's important to you deliver your project. So is there any strategy and then criteria to selecting the the devices or method to read out the city? I mean, you guys choose like a bus or and then another team choose like a mobile phone, maybe drone, and there's so many technical stuff evolved in our city. So do you have any, I don't know, strategies or tactics or view to select those kind of devices?
I can maybe go first and Fabrizio can add. I think because we were focusing on kind of first person perspective, I think the mobile camera was just an easy, accessible device and technology, and you can edit it very easily. And I think it was both the walking and the recording was really meant to, as Fabrizio said, like hone your senses to what you're walking past and looking at. So I guess the closer it is to the body and your eyes, I think maybe that was the criteria.
Yeah, I think we thought that everyone today uses smartphones every day. So also for the familiarity with this tool, the students would have not have problems in using the device as an extension of the body in some ways. And also I think that because we were studying time and space, the idea of taking videos and not just photos was also connected with the objective of capturing the city in motion, which is why we decided to ask students to take videos.
Yeah, on that extent, do you have a more successful choice of devices or less successful ones? And what is that kind of criteria?
I think that we understood through the workshop that there might be some gaps in understanding what is the right device to better understand the city. For example, someone came up with a map, like like a drawing, which is similar to what also Catherine found, like the map from 18th century, which is like another result of walking and observing and kind of trying to decipher the rhythm of the city, you know? So yeah, I'm not sure there was a criterion to decide what is the right tool. I think it's something that we actually discovered, that we tried. So it was a test phase. So I found it pretty effective, but I am open to listen if someone thinks that maybe we should use another method or another device.
I'm more like listening from you, but we are very curious. How do you start to choose those devices to start with, for observation, and what kind of things you are looking for? What is the interesting result for you, or what is the interesting findings coming out of these kind of searches, interesting ways of searching and observing city? It's something, yeah, quite interesting.
Yeah, and responding to your comment, I think like maybe video was also tools that Fabrizio and I are familiar with, and we think its ability to kind of create a narrative is really powerful, and you can do very quick, short montages. You can almost create a story about what you see in the city. And some videos actually in the beginning were not like quite there, and it took some editing and re-editing. But also I think the editing process got the students to think about like, oh, we should look at this thing. So they went back to the site, and that kind of whole editing process I think was really interesting and worked well.
Cool. So that was a short workshop and very quick exercise to create narrative and stories. That was really interesting. I'm wondering, what if this is you have more time, if it's a semester or year-long work, what would be an end goal for one of these projects, maybe as an example? What would you say?
So the question is if with more time the result was different?
Yeah, or is it just a
For sure.
more articulated narrative? Is that the end goal, or?
I'm not sure. It's like I think I see it like we investigated the city as an archive. So it's like you enter an archive and you start to collect the data and see what you can do with the data. So it's just, you know, create a narrative with what you can find, what you see, and connecting some kind of fragmented information, connecting the dots. So I think that the more time you have, and maybe the more understanding you can have, and so different trajectories in narrativization of the project. So also it depends. I mean, if we could have more time to also explore the city, we would have more information. I think that for the nature of the workshop, it's like, I think it's already effective what we did in just a couple of days going in the city. And then I think it was an exercise for the students to understand what they can really do, and finding some initial ideas so that they could develop after the workshop. And I mean, some students already told us they wanted to continue to work on the project. So I think this is also a sign that, of course, there is room to improve, to have a better understanding, so to extend the research. There are many things that many different outcomes can come from this kind of research. I think this is only like an initial stage of what can be a project.
Mhm. It sounds like to me is a way of learning the city. So you're kind of exchanging and sharing the method of the way to learn and read the city as an archive. But now I get it. So it's very difficult to say how it's going to be applied. It's because it's so broad, isn't it? What you can do with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, sorry, Catherine, maybe,
Oh, go ahead.
and then I add something.
Oh, yeah, I think we meant for it to be a kind of open process, and we didn't know exactly where we would end up, whether we would even have time to do a kind of proposal response. And I guess also in some projects like the tree project, they were able to find some really interesting research that kind of it bounced back and forth between research and first person observation. And I think I'd expect that if there was a bit more time with that project, for example, it would become much richer with more observations and more also scientific research and readings.
Maybe I want to ask students if there was any difficulties or like what are the learnings, or was there any confusions in the beginning, and like it's learning curve, I guess you students kind of went through. I don't know if do we have students from your unit? No?
I'm not sure.
No, I actually wanted to ask the questions, but I went through the students. Unfortunately, you don't have anybody from Unit 1. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
What was your observation from students' experience, maybe from tutors? What kind of things they will feel like difficult?
I think definitely the first day of walking and documenting was somewhat challenging because maybe you don't know exactly what you're looking for, and it's a really trial and error method. But everyone came back with something really personally important to them and also interesting to us that we didn't expect they would come back with. So challenging, but also they did have fun, aside from very hot weather.
I'm sure your sort of the slowness and the participation kind of that really kicked into the students sort of new, in a way, like the way of looking at the city. So I'm sure it's a new sort of challenge for them at the beginning, but I think it's really valuable for them to sort of just experience different method to look at the city. But I just wonder, because we always struggle to explain the meanings and the value behind this methodology for the students within this such a short time, because they without sort of understanding what's going on, they sometimes have to do first, and then maybe towards the end of the workshop they kind of understand halfway. Probably some students still don't understand maybe. So in terms of sort of structuring the workshop itself as a sort of educator, do you think it's worth putting sort of this research and the architectural proposal within the 9-day, 10 days workshop, or maybe is it worth sort of focusing on the research only and then trying to present and making, I don't know, because you mentioned about the video work, so maybe the outcome may be some sort of abstract video work or something. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't talked about this, so maybe Fabrizio has a different answer, but actually I was about to say that the other very challenging part was moving from research to an architectural project. And
Mm.
it was also challenging for
Definitely.
us to, we kind of talked all night and all day about what kind of proposal makes sense as a response to this research. But I think we both also really do care about form and space in the end, so it's interesting to try it out. But it did feel quite tight. Fabrizio, I don't know if you have a different view on this.
No, I agree with what you said. I think that pedagogically, even if the time was short, we wanted to show the students that these kind of researchers are not end of themselves. So you can do something with them. And that's why I think we also pushed to have a response, even if the time was short. We wanted to show them the entire process. It's like you start with knowing nothing about something, then you go through the research, and then try to use what you find to respond, to create an architectural project. This is a design studio. So as a design studio, I think it's important for the students to have something that is like a pragmatic, that is like concrete at the end of the experience. Something that you can put in your portfolio as well. I think it's probably the students wanted. I felt that they couldn't wait to arrive to the point of starting to work on the design. So I think the research part is very important, and a lot of people, a lot of students gave us like a very positive feedback about this experience, because it was, they said, some of them said it was something new, something that they never experienced, and they learned through that. But still, I think the design part for each architecture student is pretty important. That's why we pushed to have all these things together.
Yeah, I really appreciate. As a person who really don't know that methodology, was really helpful for even a very short amount of time or very quick one. It was really good to see what these kind of things can turn into some decision making. So it was really helpful. I think the reason June was asking is our committee had a discussion a few days ago to really think about, because a lot of most of the units have really interesting design research, but we are also kind of sad that we are always rushing to get an outcome as well within a short amount of time. And as we want to have these units as a longer term pedagogy, then we are also thinking maybe next year, maybe because this year you have done with a result, maybe next year, maybe you can start to focus on something more as a research base. So like looking at these few years of work as a series of combination of different research in different aspects and different details and resolution. That's something we are also kind of really keen to discuss with everybody. Of course, if you are interested in joining us next year again, yeah, but yeah. So this is for everybody actually. So we can actually talk about it as a pedagogy of this entire workshop curriculum. Yeah, so because we don't want this to end as a just short-term thing and just like having quick different workshops and that's it. We want this to be at least as a conversation, it's a continuous conversation. Yeah. So.
Sounds interesting.
I think one of
go
ahead.
I wanted to ask if you have an idea of which kind of other methods maybe can be explored during the next workshops.
I think we want to encourage tutors to do anything you want, and maybe also to think about what is more beneficial for the research sake, because now we know each other, now we kind of got introduced, and maybe you can feel free to focus on something that matters a lot for, yeah, in a bigger perspective.
To me, in a way, to me, I think all, or as long as we have some potential architectural argument based on the research, based on what we've done from the workshop experiment, and that should be really okay, I think. So I think I really want our tutors maybe think how we can bring some architectural argument or some very interesting topic based on research, engagement, some kind of some experiment or whatever. So I think also I really want to see a little bit more deeper understanding or research, some site investigation, etc. But everything need to maybe lead to some architectural strong argument we can maybe discuss. So that is really important part of roles of architectural workshop, I think. So yeah, so I don't want to maybe just very quickly student will design whatever in order to finish the works. That's not really good things, I think, in the short-term workshop. So maybe we can discuss those things after or maybe during those sessions. Yeah. Also, yeah, I wanna have one more things, and also I think the unit 1, I really appreciate the works of unit 1 in terms of finding very subtle idea between fast and slow. So I think we all the time looking, especially to me, I looked at Seoul as a fast city mostly. It's difficult to see the slowness in the city, but you pick the slowness from the Seoul, and then you try to find very subtle, how can I say, subtle something in between. So I think that thing is really I will appreciate. So maybe we're gonna, so the rhythm is very important. Actually, the rhythm is very important part of elements operating city. So I think that thing quite interesting part of it. So maybe we can maybe discuss a little bit more if we have time later on, I think. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah, I was just
Thank
like
you.
thinking out loud, how about like 1 year's workshop is really just doing research and observing, and then maybe pick one, and then the next year, all of them are working on narrative or like turning this research. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud because, yeah, that's something we want to discuss later. Okay, but I think we have to move on, but thank you so much.
Thank
That
you.
was awesome.
Thank you, Fabrizio and Catherine.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
you. I hope other tutors can also speak up and comment. Okay.
Sure.
Unit
I
two?
have one comment about this unit.
Oh, yeah.
For me, I was very impressive because when I talked with Kyungmin, who was from Unit 1, and actually, I think the most precious part about this unit is making students to be curious about the city, like Euljiro, and start them to think in different perspective. So why we perceive Euljiro as Euljiro. So we feel something from Euljiro, but it's hard to describe in one word. But in case of Kyungmin, when I talked with him, like he was trying to see in different perspectives. So why we perceive Euljiro as Euljiro, and actually he's keep doing his work on the city of Euljiro as a studio, and he's even doing like competitions. So that was very interesting. Like even though this workshop was only 10 days, he started to get more curious about this Euljiro, this part. and he's keep doing his research and he's keep doing his work and he's keep thinking about that. And I think like for me, the output is output can be like important, but I think this is also important to make students be more curious and start to think in this different perspective and keep doing their work and extending it.
Really appreciate, yeah. So really offered a new perspective to look at cities. That's really valuable thing to learn. Okay.
Can I
Oh
just
yeah. Yes.
it's regarding the I guess data collection, if you can call it that, or research. I thought it was quite interesting how there are different paces, I think, when you move from point A to point B. And if you want to get there as soon as possible, you really don't see anything. And then there's, if you have like 10 minutes walk, in front of you, and you're only like maybe like 20 minutes before your meetup or something, you take a bit more time, you look around. And then there's like the idea of flaneur, like the French way of walking with the turtle. And you really see different things completely. And I think this video recording of, like extension of your body type of data collection, not in a bad way, but I almost see there's a bit of like violence to it, because you already take a lot of time to walk slow, but you're forcing a very specific perspective. And it's almost like, I mean, the idea of, movie is usually to capture a story, right? But it's like an unintended story of a singular perspective. I find is super interesting, but I definitely think there could be some correlation between the choice of media and the pace and the purpose of that journey, almost, which could be something that you can look into. I don't know. I'm just, throwing ideas. But yeah, that was my comment.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for the suggestion. And actually, one of the students pointed this out, and their project kind of became about ways to unintentionally record, which is why they have cameras strapped onto their hand and ankle. That was one experiment, but we don't have a response directly, but we definitely realize that it's something we kind of took for granted, like you can walk around and record, but we realized, as you did, that there's maybe a gap in a range that we can question and maybe even utilize.
Because I mean, the reason why I mentioned that was because I was jogging the other day in Hyde Park, and I didn't know that my video was on. So I had this like 10-minute long blur of a video in my phone. And it was, I mean, I was looking through it and there was a lot of panting. But super interesting, no? Like I was, and it was more haphazard than anything that I've seen. Yeah, and I just thought it was super interesting to kind of see it in different paces, as well as, accidental kind of framing of works. So yeah, that's where my the thought came from.
Okay, thank you. We have to move on. Yeah, but thank you so much. Unit 2. 제협 기준, right?
Can you see?
Yes.
Hey, we're unit 2, gather room. And I'll just explain like draft idea or some concept of our unit and brief. And then we'll shortly show you what students' works later. And basically, like, we love something solid and concrete. And we love like physicality, something such as like buildings or those things. And we believe that only things that can be written and drawn exist. And among them, like the thing we are most interested in is the form, like such as like form, shape, like geometry, composition, proportion, elements, like all of those kind of things. And the form we are talking about is not just for the like function or aesthetical aspect. What we believe is like there must be like another principle behind, which is like hidden and which is invisible. So like if we explore those kind of rules, we are thinking that at some point we will be able to reach even like taxing part of architecture, which is like such as like psychological parts, like lifestyle, routines, rituals, and even like unconscious, like, and we're thinking like it is like logical process using like as an algorithm or like mathematical formula to approach this part of architecture. And for the like last goal we aim to set is like creating a new rules for the daily routine. By proposing a new form of architecture, we are trying to suggest a new way of life and new way of using it. This is to propose like an alternative way for the upcoming society, not as the solution for social problems. And due to the third period of workshop, we spend nearly half of the time for just analyzing references. And the references we are dealing with is basically unrealized architecture. And these spaces contains the zeitgeist and are intentionally created. And by exploring this kind of like non-exist space, we rediscover the possibilities that have missed before. And last year, we focused on the shape of architecture and proposed like urban scale project. And this year, we explored just composition of space, and we proposed some like little bit small scale like building project. And reducing the scale requires a more precise spatial design. And if last year was about just for like collective gathering in mass people, this year was like a little bit scaled down and more focused into like dwelling itself and like social dwelling, apartment, those kind of communal space. And last year, we analyzed unbuilt project of the architect. And this year we looked into like cinematic space, which is like space drawn in like Korean film. And by reducing architecture information of the references, each student requires more creative and diverse idea to reconstruct the project. Because last year, what we thought was like, because we already gave them architect's project, they have already like drawings and all the strong image. So it is a little bit like limits their creative as well. So we changed it to like more abstract way. And each student studied spatial composition of the film they chose, and we combined them into the one booklet. And the space in the film exists as like fragmentary stage set rather than architecture. So this process itself already implies the student's design. And students picked the most important moment in the film and defined the architecture device that played a decisive role. And after drawing the diagram, which was like sequence of the movie, and reconstruct this architecture device into their own project. So the project should dealing with social agenda and should be expressed in a single drawing and a single image, like as we did before. So Lydia studied like JSA by Park Chan-wook, and she criticized individualism and polarization of Korean apartment, and suggests some like new kind of social housing, which is like functional space is totally separated, and there should be like some like uncertain moment for the encounter of the like users. And Eric analyzed Il Mare by Lee Hyun-sung, and he criticized John's system of Korean housing, and he was like criticizing of the reality of inevitable moves of Koreans. So the artist studio he suggests is like kind of like boathouse in UK. So it's like floating on the water and like cannot be defined as a like one building. So and Alba analyzed Bong Joon-ho's Barking Dogs Never Bite, and she brings some idea of like environmental problem in contemporary era. So she's talking that like our residential environment use so much energy. So when you see the movie, like there was a like door is acting as an obstacle for the main character. So she brings that idea into like making rotating wall system and then limiting the usage in certain time sets. So if you see the plan, like at some point of like time, there is no bedroom and there is no kitchen, only living room is activated. And at certain time, only the kitchen is activated. Like those way is limiting the usage of energy into one way to reducing the whole energy set. And Sumin analyzed Kim Ki-duk's spring, summer, autumn, winter, and spring. And she concerned about mental and physical health of the Korean. And she like suggests like 5 layered of space apartment building with like exercise facility like gym and meditation space is included. So this is the plan, and it's layered with living unit and some like meditation space or garden with gym, and to bring the idea of like new lifestyles for the like citizens. And Jonghyun analyzed Bong Joon-ho's Memory of Murder, and she picked up that in the movie there is a like rail pathway is like circulating the whole town. So all the crimes and murder couldn't go out of that boundary. So it's keep like rotating and happening again. So endless murder thing. So she points out like no-key zones problem of social in Korean society now. And she made a like one circular pathway is dividing adult space and children's space. So making utopian kind of dream for the children's area. So no kids apartment, at the same time, the space for only kids. And Sumin watched Lady Wang Jung's by Chanuk Park, and she mentions about like phenomena of increasing single person and Honbap culture. So she made a kind of like capsule system high-rise hotel in really small area for the like Honbap or Honyang. Honyang is like watching movie alone, or Honsu. Those kind of like endless, I don't know. It seems like amusement park for the single person. And Jin watched Host by Bong Joon-ho, and she focused on like Seoul's like delivery culture. Like as we're really familiar already using those kind of like application or like delivery things, and in the movie, the main character, that young lady, is eaten by monster, and using the monster as a vehicle to moving the space. So she kind of suggests of like delivering space. So this kind of capsule system is attaching to the existing building and delivers the shop itself, like home shopping TV channel show. And Yahan watches Shaking Tokyo by Bong Joon-ho, and she criticizing the working environment of the Korea and Haeshik culture. And as you see this timetable, she criticizing those and kind of suggests a new dwelling space with like working space, and all the things are combined together. So in this apartment building, people no longer have to waste time for commuting and 회식. So living, sleeping, working, everything is happening in one room. So this is like 회식 apartment. And Jiyoon watches like Castaway on the Moon by Lee Hae-jun, and she points out this level difference system in the movie is like making the storyline. So she also criticizing the like dense city in like Seoul, high density city and like development. So she kind of like designed underground hidden garden. So this kind of like underground system is like forbidden for the and cannot get into, just for like exist as a nature itself. So making like new environmental system for the existing cities. And Soyoung analyzed Eun-gyo by Jung Ji-woo, and when in the movie the old guy is living alone and it's really private house, there is a like high wall around, and Eun-gyo, the little girl, is only one who can cross the wall by this ladder. So she points out that, and she was criticizing of like privatization of Korean apartment complex, and she designed like extremely private garden for apartment, but paradoxically it provides public pathway for the children or for like just commuter. So you can see there are like small rabbit hole for the pathway. And Hyunsub analyzed Park Chan-wook's Handmaiden, and in the movie, like lady and maid are living together, but there is a like wall is separating them, but there is a like small hole. They're communicating with those small holes by like fingers or those kind of scene, and he's bringing some social agenda is like generation problem between elderly and younger generation and living alone, those kind of thing. And he designed a house with a like 2 unit is attached, but there is a like wall with the holes. So parent generation and younger generation can living together, and there is a hole for the like for communicating. Like that was all of our project for the last year, no, this year, and this was from last year, was like bigger scale urban project. And this year's project. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll wait for the question.
Thank you. I'm gonna start first. Thank you very much. So you're all new. I think you edited a new books, which is really nice. I really appreciate it with the colors. And I now more understanding what you guys want to try to do through the workshops. So in a way, I have two questions, and one is the term form as a term. Actually, your term as a your term is quite broad, I think. So you covered many things at the same time. So actually, why you have those broad range of idea or form, and what you guys trying to do through the workshop? I think you are trying to find something through the workshop, or you have something in mind to test. That's why one question. The second one is architectural device, very interesting in this year. But I think architectural device having many different elements implies, for instance, movement, and some students having plan, others having diagram, etc. Right? So those devices needed to be, I think, developed as an architectural proposal. I know I got some sense of element or very important part, critical part of something in the device, but there are a little bit more gap between device and final proposal, I feel, right? Maybe I can get it, but that is your intention, or some kind of maybe, or you are trying to have some kind of methodology how to develop to student, because we don't have any kind of procedure from the architectural device final project now, right? So how do you guys deliver the process with the student?
Yeah, really difficult question to answer. And I think both question is related, like all connected. And from like starting from last question, architecture device, like that subject is what we want to study, like test a little bit more for maybe in next or sometimes later. And for this year, architecture device is not acting as a like device. In fact, it was not a physical material, and architecture device was like kind of logic for how forming the like space for this year, like kind of like corridor is attaching to the like rooms. those kind of like one idea was like architecture device for this year. And what that was not our intention from the beginning. What we thought is like kind of like more precise one, like 2 steps or 1 column, or like kind of like those kind of like more like precise and physical thing. But during the like workshop, we saw that like students was more focused and got interesting point from like more conceptual abstract way, as like just floating thing itself is like that idea and term can be acting as like architecture device. So we kind of like enjoyed that moment. And also form we are talking about is, I think that is the form, like not as a shape. Forming is like really like core idea of the, like for example, like we're drawing plan or section, and what we hope and what we want to do is that plan and section or whatever architecture can be explained into one single sentence. For example, like Hyunsup's house, like housing project, is a housing unit which has like whole like perforated wall on for the living room. For us, that is the form. Like core idea can be drawn into one drawing or one sentence.
Maybe I can add a little bit more about how we think about form and why we are interested in form. I don't know if it's because we both work in Japan and we both studied in UK, so maybe that our interest in form or shape maybe comes from there. And we both are kind of our theme, I think, is deeply rooted in the architectural culture in Switzerland, German speaking Switzerland especially, and UK. Maybe I can come up with some of the anecdote of Valerio Oggiati, maybe. Oggiati did a small interview with Go Hasegawa, Japanese architect, and Hasegawa was asking about Oggiati's house, Villa Alem in Portugal, and Hasegawa was mentioning about the atmosphere of his house and very short corridor and no light. And he's mentioning those phenomenological aspects of the house, and Oggiati basically rejects Hasegawa's statement about those atmosphere because it's always subjective. And Oggiati was not interested in interpreting the space with a subjective term. He always wanted to interpret the space in an objective way. And I think in that sense, we're a little bit similar. We try not to interpret space with the atmosphere, with aesthetics. What we are interested in is how to interpret space in a more objective way. And so we're in that sense different from other architects like Peter Mockley, who deal with space with a more aesthetic way. Yeah.
In a way, I think you are quite interesting to pick up some kind of objectivity from our architectural devices, rather than just objectivity of feeling, word, etc. Right? So that's why each students having maybe columns or some more architectural elements from or devices rather than some social or movement, etc. Right?
Yeah, and also, as I mentioned during at the like brief, and what you're thinking is like when you designing the form, what we want to do is like real objective way and kind of like almost same way as like computation design we are thinking. I'm not sure, like Sumin
Like
and
you,
Taesung will agree on that, but
like
what we
like
do,
Unit 4, like Unit 4, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind
yeah,
of like grasshopper thing.
yeah,
That is what
yeah.
he wants to do, real objective way. Like in one
On
column is making that activation, two columns is
computation,
something like, yeah, something like that way. And
okay.
what they
Com-
trying to what they're trying to do is like, as a conclusion, it is criticizing some social aspect. So with kind of that kind of objective calculation of designing thing is
Mm,
talking, the creating form is talking, like shouting to like society, like why do we need to living with our parents together in one room, or like those kind of like strong ideas is coming.
mm. I think it's quite nice to maybe speculate on what's different between or similarity, your form and typology, I think. Because typology
Yeah.
all the time trying to pursue objectivity as a certain plan or some agile form, right? But I think your thing is quite a little bit different. So in a way, nice to maybe discuss through the workshop what's gonna be different, what's gonna be similarity. Mm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, actually, I have some question. Well, I mean, because like just try to understand the real methodology of yours, to be honest. So, like, because like when I see your project, I mean, some projects are quite clear to me, but yeah, some of them are a bit like the. I see there's a really big gap in between the after analysis of the movies, and then when they move on to their own project, like when. And the relationship in between there is like some of them are just came from the, it seems like it came from the some spatial ideas of the movie, or some just came from the some from the story, and sometimes it just came from the, I don't know, like some kind of the movement. So like what is the intention in between the like these movies and the real project over there? Like, I mean, what is the relationship in between over there, and then what is the reason why you gave the so much like let's say freedom. I don't think it's really correct word, but the yeah, freedom to the students to like driven away the OT's kind of the project.
And it is true, because like some chose like someone who is more analyze the like sequence and bring that sequence into like their own project, and some just brings the kind of like visual image as it is, and like everyone brings different part. And for that, I think like all was fine. But of course there is like preference of for us as well. We enjoy like some more like analytic things, but other was fine. But because like that is like nature of this workshop, because as a, like same as last year, because it's like 10 days, and what we are, why we giving them references and starting for the half of the period is just to for the designing itself for their own project. If we didn't bring any references, or just as a starting as a like freeway, like pick some topic in social agenda and design something is, I think that is too broad for just 1 week project. And I'm not sure how Heejun think, but I think if we have like different term workshop, like for example, like 1 month thing, I think there will be a like totally different way for the bringing for the like final project. Maybe like that reference part like will be totally different, I think.
Can you point out like how is it going to be different if it is going to be like that?
And that is
For example,
also my yeah. My intention was like limiting information. From last year to this year was like architecture to just bringing image is totally different for the like students to bring their own idea. And what I'm thinking is for the next year, even not giving them an image, not like movie or things, or just giving them some like text of like poetry or novel, or even like just a painting of some like Korean painter, or like limiting the information of references is kind of like challenging thing is. And I think like bringing some ideas from some existing references are kind of like key moment and really interesting part. And yeah, I don't know, but hard difficult question.
Maybe one of the reason why we it seems like there's a very weak connection between the research and the final project is because the way we are like using or like taking advantage of the research is that we're finding the spatial possibility of space from the research. So there are a lot of possibility that students find out, and students only pick one of them and adopt that possibility into the project. So from the step behind, it seems like maybe there's a weak link between two, because it's one of the very many possibilities. Yeah, and I love the analogy that Ko came up with a few days ago when we were having the conversation. He said that from the research, what we're finding is the line in the basketball court, and is of course the line in the basketball court it works as a rule. But it is not kind of imposing the rules strictly to everyone. Of course, the line is important to the basketball player, but what we can do there is we can open the concert, we can do a camping there, we can have a casual conversation there. So for those who are not playing the basketball, the line is not imposing anything. The line working as a basketball rule is one of the possibility that line in the basketball court has. So I think the approach that we are taking in terms of the research is somewhat, similar to what we are thinking of the line in the basketball court. I don't know if it makes sense. But...
And yeah, like references were just a hint for making new form, making new rule. But problem is creating new form and setting a new rules for the lifestyle. We found that is almost impossible in 1 week. For students to bringing new form is, and even for all of us, I think. And because I was working in like junior, and I saw some like very creative moment he bring some like kind of new way of using and new possibilities. And I think that's why we're bringing some references to giving some hint.
Can I quickly say something?
Yeah.
So I think I almost didn't see the beginning part as research in a way. I just saw it as almost like an interpretation. So what I think is super interesting is that, I mean, when you look at a plan of an architectural, entity, it's kind of like a map, right? It's a cartography. You have assigned symbols that are promised to carry out a certain meaning. So like, I mean, I kind of see the basketball court as like from a different perspective, because we as a society agree and understand that line to be something, and these kind of planar symbols are exactly that. But what I find super interesting is that students will watch a movie, pick a moment or pick an interpretation, they interpret their story or narrative through objective means to create a new narrative almost. And I find architecture as a transformative tools in between to be very interesting, kind of encapsulating thing as a device within your unit. And I so that's why I kind of like, I don't know if it's an insult or not, but like I just don't think this is a research, it's an interpretation.
Yeah, true.
Hmm.
And we are pretending
Okay,
in architecture, and we're pretending really objective. But I know, like, in fact, our approach is really subjective way. Because
yeah.
all students is their interpretation is like totally in their own site.
Mm.
And I cannot, because like last year James was criticizing those kind of points, how those diagram can be objective way, because we are showing as a like objective thing, but that is kind of interesting part as well. I think for like we're research thing is like just using that as a like tool for design. And our final project is also pretending as like just one single drawing image is like really solid and architecture thing, but in fact what he wants to show is idea more, not just a building. Like narrative and criticizing the social aspect is the key thing, and those like more like psychological parts or unmaterialized idea itself is kind of like goal for the whole workshop. And using solid objective architecture as a like tool.
Thank you.
I think in a way you guys need to have think drawing or plan or some kind of some tool drawings in order to deliver what objectivity is from the research or subjectivity experience. So they're gonna be interesting maybe works in order to maybe discuss, in order to develop much more interesting new form, I think. The form you have now is new form, but it is possible form we can maybe imagine, think just by looking at the movie, it's not criticized. It is about it is about kind of relationship, right? So it has to think what is the tool or what is the methodology convert from subjectivity to objectivity as a universal quality of architecture.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, I think your methodology is more like a narrative machine. So your drawing insist or says something from subjectivity, right? But interesting point is like if the people feel the same way, I mean if there are collective like agreement or feeling or whatever they thought, so your product, I mean coming from the narrative machine can be objective. You know, that's why interesting. So it's not about the like you know, personal thing, but it more like how we build the, you know, the each project or interpretation from the individuality. That is a key point, I think.
From my observation, I really appreciate the clarity your unit has always, and then you also kind of push that to have like this amount of drawing, this amount of detail. I think that really helped also, like at least for me, to understand the methodology a little bit clearly, because yeah, it's well communicated. And I think there are lots of aspects that you are tackling within this short amount of time, including the research and analysis and critique and provocate certain aspects, and then creating a narrative proposal and including the drawing and the book. I think there are lots of work has been done and really like put packages together in a very clear manner. That's why I think that's something really appreciated. I want to say that I don't know, like from my understanding, it seems like you are really designing certain experiences, built environments. You are designing urban spaces and room or houses through very perspectival, objective manner, and then creating kind of a set of, let's say, imaginative experiences. I think that is a very interesting way of creating architectural environment, city and urban environment. And you also try to visualize that as a formal drawing. I think that's really appreciated and interesting. I don't know if I read your work correctly. Yeah, but that was not really a question. It was more like an observation. Maybe if there is any student perspective, that would be interesting to hear.
Yeah, we have 3 students here.
Cool. What was your experience? What did you learn? What did you appreciate? What did you hate?
From my, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Explain.
should I say something maybe? I was
Sure.
one
Yes,
of the
please.
students. I guess for me, it was kind of a unique experience because, well, firstly, I'm not from Korea, but I actually knew that my tutors from before. And I think it was a very interesting unit for me, and kind of followed kind of methodology that I was interested in to learn and maybe employed a little bit before. I think overall the workshop was really good, but it was like really intense. So I guess a thing I would want to like change with the workshop, maybe it would be a 2-week workshop instead of a 10-day workshop, maybe, because maybe if you got like stuck on like an idea or like you weren't really sure where you're going, you still needed to like push forward really quickly because of the time frame. So I guess those were my initial observations of the unit and the whole overall workshop.
Well, hands up.
Yes, students that are participating in Unit 2. it was just 10 days, but it was very impressive experience that skip some lines that I think is not important for the whole movie or the key scene that could be changed the whole result of the movie, and pick the objective in some kind of scene and interpret some new way to architectural devices is very impressive to me. So I can run around the 10 days for those impressive sequence of the project. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
At the same time, I think 10 days is because the short period, I think result can comes better in somehow. Because if you get like longer workshop, I think
And you
we
probably
cannot,
think too much, yeah.
yeah, we cannot push it like in like, yeah, in like that ways.
I totally agree with Ko.
Mm.
And 10 days is still quite long, no? I think 10 days
Yeah,
is
true.
the maximum.
And 100 meters run, like
Yeah,
run
yeah.
is faster than
But I think just 10 days
I
makes
prefer 7
impressive.
days.
One semester, when we're doing one semester, for the whole,
yeah.
I don't know, like 3 or 4 months, students don't work. They just chill, and they don't really produce that much amount of stuff.
Yeah, there are really different kinds of vibe and benefits for this amount of short, intensive workshop. Yeah, because we have focus, we are all there together. Normally, we can produce a semester amount of work within this short time. Yeah.
That's why sometimes I feel like if, like, for example, this unit 2 has got quite narrative approach to the architecture. So maybe we should just focus on this interpretation of the, I don't know, film or whatever, unbuilt project, and then maybe keep doing this. I mean, even if you transform or even if you propose something, maybe we can keep the presentation or the outcome within this narrative drawing rather than jumping into the sort of architecture or the building. So I think we have to also think that maybe the range or the boundary of the architecture a little bit sort of bigger than what we usually do. So so we can, I don't know, the students can probably have a chance to think a little bit deeper in a way so they can understand better. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think that can be also we can really rethink about what is the outcome of that kind of research. Then maybe the outcome is a student, a student, they learned how to look at movies differently, before and after. What is before? What is after? Yeah, or how a designer became a better designer or better thinker. I think those can also be included as a pedagogical outcome. So it doesn't have to be always architecture drawing.
Yeah. I mean, always. I mean, when we think about the AA sort of, well, whenever we say AA spirit, right, or the prop, the style, is that we focus on the process of the design rather than the outcome or the result of it. So I think in that sense, we really have to focus on the whole process, that every stage that we are sort of interpreting something, we are transforming something, we are proposing something. I think that every little step needs to be understood by all the students. I think that's their kind of learning for sure.
Yeah, it's time to move on, but we can accommodate one more comment. If not, okay, we can move on to Jimmy. Oh, we are not going to have a break. I'm sorry. If you want to leave for toilet break or coffee or anything, you feel free to turn off your video for a while. But we will just go full speed without break. Is that
Oh,
okay?
we now have lunch break. Oh, okay. It's only lunch for us, right?
Sorry, yeah, we have also evening and night time zone.
Right. Okay. Yeah, no
Okay,
problem.
Jimmy.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, just give me a second.
Me as well.
Maybe Jimmy was thinking that we're gonna have a break before
I
he
see.
started.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, I'm sorry.
Yeah, maybe 5-minute break, no? So that
Okay,
he can prepare. Yeah.
okay, let's have 10 minutes break. We'll come back at 10.
10?
Thank you
Well,
very
10
much.
minutes later. All right.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
See ya.
Please come back by 10. Hi, Jimmy, are you ready?
Yeah, yeah.
We are having a break, a 10 minutes break.
Oh, okay.
So 8:10, we're coming
Okay,
back.
thank you. Yeah, sorry.
No problem. Sorry that we canceled. I canceled the.
Oh, I didn't know.
break.
I got panic when it's not following the schedule.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
No worries. Yeah.
Feel free to turn off the video until.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.